Bring it around this way. There we go. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare. Thank you all for coming. And Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Yamuna Jiva Chamare Yamuna Jiva Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Adonita Nanda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Lingam Jaya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadha Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much for coming. Whenever we come to the temple from where we stay, we drive past the ISKCON. And on kind of sunny days, and even on some sunny day, not so sunny days, there are many people running around the common. And it's a good thing that people are concerned about their physical health. But unfortunately, people aren't much concerned about their spiritual health. And that is actually, Hare Krishna, the most important health that we need to look after. So, in order to expedite that, over 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita. And we are blessed to have the Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So, Srila Prabhupada, being a pure devotee of Krishna, he can properly present what Krishna says and what Krishna was giving to human society through a conversation with his disciple, Arjuna. So it is a wonderful conversation that deals with all the different aspects of the self, the real self, not the external self. Like I'm wearing a jumper, and underneath the jumper, I have another jumper, and a kurta, and everything. So these are coverings of me, but me is something underneath. So similarly, this body is actually a covering of ourself or our soul. This is not who we are, this body. It's a temporary covering. And Krishna explains in the second chapter that just as a person gives up old clothing and accepts new clothes, the soul simply accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So practically in every religious system, there's an understanding of the soul being eternal, There are some different understandings of soul, but in the Bhagavad Gita it explains that the soul is the intrinsic part of the self, and it is equal in every living body, not just in human bodies, but in plant bodies and in animal bodies and bug bodies and insect bodies, in amoeba bodies. It's the same soul, same quality of soul, which is Mamaivam Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manaksistan Indriyani Prakriti Stani Karshiti. The Krishna says later that the living entities in this material world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So we're not the body, but we are conditioned by the body to want things for our senses. So in the Bhagavad Gita, especially in the second chapter, Krishna clarifies the position that the person is not the body, but is the spiritual essence within. Later in this third chapter, the question arises, how does a person maintain that understanding in one's activities? It's one thing to think that way or maintain some intellectual understanding. It's another thing to act in that understanding. So in this, the third chapter is called Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga, or action in Krishna consciousness. So yoga means to link with the Supreme. In Latin, the word religiare also means to link. It means to link with God. So yoga is the same definition, to link with the Supreme. It has no other purpose. It's not for feeling good and feeling healthy and then go out. I used to take karate, and I did yoga and TM and the whole thing. And after a good workout, you feel so good. You go out and have a beer and drink, smoke some cigarettes. So, what the heck? Sorry. So, a complete misunderstanding. So, activity. The question arises, how does a person maintain the understanding of being a soul outside in one's personal activities? So that is discussed in this third chapter. And in text number 9, there's a very interesting shloka in Sanskrit. Yagyarta karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana tad artam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu, Krishna, has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. So we are performing activities. Actually, early in the same chapter, Krishna mentioned something very interesting. He says that all men are forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born for the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. We may be sitting And it doesn't appear like we're doing anything, but actually so many things are going on in our physical body even to maintain being sitting straight. And as we get older, maybe sitting straight is not such an easy thing to do on the floor. But the mind, the intelligence, they're very active, and those are also parts of the self. So no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. So as long as the soul is in the body, there's so much activity and there's so many desires in the heart and in the mind. So here's our purport, the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since one has to work, even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that that purpose can be fulfilled. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, or sacrificial performances. All sacrificial performances also are meant for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu, or Krishna. The Vedas enjoin Yajna vai Vishnu. In other words, the same purpose is served whether one performs prescribed yajnas or directly serves Lord Vishnu. Krishna consciousness is therefore performance of yajna as it is prescribed in this verse. The Varnashram institution. Varnashram means a system of 4 ashrams and 4 varnas. The varnas are the social situations, the brahmins, the kshatriyas, the Vyas and the Sudras, the priestly class, the administrative military class, the mercantile banking class, and the working class. And the ashrams are the brahmacharis, the grihastas, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyas. The brahmacharis are the celibate students. Grihastas are the married persons, married according to vows. Vanaprastha means retired from business and family connection, and renounced means surrendered to completely serving the Lord. So that's the Varnashram system. Varnashram Acharvata Purushena Parakpuman Vishnu Arajate Nanyata Sat Asat Panta. Therefore, one has to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any other work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage. For both good and evil work have their reactions, and any reaction binds the performer. Therefore, one has to work in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna or Vishnu. And while performing such activities, one is in a liberated stage. This is the great art of doing work. And in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. One should therefore act very diligently under the expert guidance of a devotee of Lord Krishna, or under the direct instruction of Lord Krishna himself, under whom Arjuna had the opportunity to work. Nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. This practice will not only save one from the reaction of work, but will also gradually elevate one to transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. So this understanding is called sambandha. Sambandha means when a person understands that they are not simply a material body, that they are spiritual souls, Beyond Sambandha is Abhideya. Abhideya means the practices which bring one closer to God. And they are explained in the Vedic literatures as uh, Shraddha, um, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Sakyam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Shravanam means to hear about spiritual subject matter. Shravanam, Kirtanam means to speak or to chant. We were all chanting previously. Chanting. Smaranam means to remember. In the Vedic understanding, if you hear nicely and you chant nicely, then you'll be able to remember. You'll be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Padasevana means to worship. Worship the lotus feet, which means to accept oneself as the servant of the Supreme Lord. Archana means the direct worship of the deity. Vandana means to offer prayers. Dasyam means to accept oneself as the companion and servant of the Lord. Sakyam means to be the friend. To consider oneself, to consider the Lord as being one's best friend. And Atmanivedana means to offer everything. Offer oneself and all one's possessions in service to the Lord. So it's a very elevated understanding when we're speaking about pure devotion. But it's a step-by-step process in which one gradually accepts these performance of these activities and tries to develop the consciousness, wanting, desiring to link up with the Lord, to reestablish one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of God. So that is the Abhideya process. And ultimately it eventually develops to prayojana, which means loving God. Loving God. We're all looking for someone to love, and we're looking for someone who loves us. But we're ignoring the fact that God has been loving us for constant generations and lifetimes. And we basically haven't shown much turn or interest for his service. So I was raised a Catholic for some years. I was an altar boy, even. An altar boy is assisting the priest. I have a twin brother, and we were the perfect set, a perfect match. So sometimes you had one very tall altar boy, and sometimes you had a very short altar boy. Didn't look so good. But my brother and I, twin brother and I, we were a perfect match. So sometimes we were called out of class at school to go for a wedding or more regularly for a funeral like that. So we served as served the priest like that. So the understanding of developing or appreciating God and understanding that we've been very negligent, actually, in our reciprocation for God's kindnesses and his glories. He's been giving us everything, and we haven't shown any response, practically speaking, outside of damning him on occasion for his mercy. So in every religion, it's there that one should be thankful for what God has given. But in the Krishna consciousness, becomes more than that, becomes performing all of one's activities for the pleasure of God. Just like cooking. Cooking is something everyone does. The ladies do more of usually than the men. There are men who are quite good cooks, I'm sure. There's one right there. He's a very good cook. But one can cook for God. One can cook for God. Cook with the meditation, just like for the mothers especially. There's no way of cooking unless you have affection for the people you cook for. It just doesn't work. It doesn't come out very good. So there has to be a meditation. There has to be some affection. There has to be some affection in order for things to come out nice. And Krishna is a person. Krishna will accept. In the 9th chapter, Krishna will explain later that if you offer me a leaf, and usually it's the leaf of the tulsi tree. In fact, it's said that Krishna won't accept any offering unless there's a tulsi leaf on it. A leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, anybody can get leaves and flowers, fruits, water. Doesn't have to be a very particularly rich person to have those things. If you offer them with love and devotion, I'll accept it. I will accept. That's his promise. That if you offer with love, then I will accept it. So you can cook for Krishna. He doesn't need to eat. He doesn't need to eat. One time my son was very young. It was winter time, in the middle of winter. Now we're kind of coming out of it. And there was a heater. There was a heater in the altar here. And so why do they put a heater there? That's for God. He can feel the cold if he wants to. And if a devotee offers a heater, then he appreciates it. That the devotee made some endeavor for his comfort. So devotees cook, devotees clean, devotees sing, devotees dance. We have some dancers here. Actually, we'll give you a chance for dancing later, if you like. It's not forced. So all these activities can be done with a mood to please the Supreme. And he's a person, and he can like it. He can do so. So our activities, if they're dedicated for the service of God, then they are enlightening and purifying. And as this verse says, that if we perform those duties for his satisfaction, one will remain unattached. Watch. You're wearing a watch. And that's a product of materialistic science and materialistic advancement. And Prabhupada mentioned that you can use things for Krishna's service. Without the service of Krishna, everything is zero. Everything knows a zero. How much is a zero worth? A zero is worth zero, is worth nothing. Now, if you have 10 zeros, you got 10 zeros, you got 10 nothings. The value of 1 zero is 0, and the value of 10 zeros is also 0. Now, if you have 1,000 zeros, the value is still 0. But if you put a 1 in front, then you get a big number. So he's saying that we need to add Krishna, we need to add God to our lives. And then our lives become valuable. They become very valuable. So there's the understanding of religion in the world, that God is the creator, God is the owner, And in all religions, there's some idea of worshiping God because God can give me things. He can give me things. He knows when you've been bad or good, go. So be good for goodness sake. Better not shout, better not cry. Santa Claus is coming to town. Sorry. But God isn't a Santa Claus. If you want to treat him like that, he can act like that. But the thing is that God can give much more. There's a story, an event. There was a lady, an old lady, and you see it here in South Africa as well. People are carrying the wood on their heads. They have to have firewood in order to cook, and they're walking along the N2 or the N1, and they're carrying the firewood on their head like that. So this old lady, she was walking and she had the wood on her head, and then she tripped and the wood fell down. And she was crying out, Govinda, Govinda, Govinda. She was so upset. And Govinda Krishna came. And she asked God, can you help put the wood back on my head? So she wasn't thinking that God could give her any more. She was so absorbed in just her material activity, she couldn't think that actually God can give me much more. And that God actually appeared. He was concerned enough to appear to help, that actually one can have a relationship. So Krishna wants to give himself. He wants to give himself, but we just want stuff. We want things. Things, temporary things that we can never keep with us. So we can act in a way that draws the attention of God. We can do things. We can do everything practically. Well, just about everything to serve God. And that is called yoga. So we're asking people to come and appreciate the opportunity of really utilizing this human life. Dogs and cats, I've got a dog, I've got two dogs. Dogs are nice, but they can't understand God. You can give them some food that's offered to God and they become benefited. But it's only human beings that can actually understand God. So that's our unique opportunity. We have some facilities. Human life has many facilities. Just like the king may have many facilities, but the king has many uh, heavy. We have these responsibilities of the human form of life, which means to know God, love Him, and serve Him. So we wanted to leave some time for questions. I don't know if there are some. They're working on it. Does anyone have a question or a comment or reflection? Okay. Number one, thank you for your class. You were speaking about the need to establish a relationship with God. My question is, what would you recommend one should be accustomed to doing things to make a connection of God with God? What should one do if one is not accustomed to doing things to make a connection with God? So, the devotee who actually introduced me to Krishna consciousness many, many years ago, over 50 years ago, his name was Rupanuga Das. And he's in one of the first movies about the Hare Krishna people. And in that movie, he talks about the change of heart. The change of heart. And he mentions that you don't have to shorten your hairstyle. My hair has grown out, it's usually a little shorter. Some people like Ashwin don't even have to bother with shaving their heads. It just happens naturally. There's another one there. It's become popular. You don't have to change your fashion, the clothes you wear. You don't have to change those things. What we want to change is change the heart. Change the heart. I was talking this morning, Curtis Care Hospital, and I remember in Memphis, Tennessee, reading the heart transplant in Cape Town, South Africa. And who knows, many years later, I would be getting treated in Curtis Care Hospital, where the first heart transplant was. But we're not talking about changing the hearts like that. We're talking about changing the mood of the heart, changing the desires of the heart. In materialistic life, we're trained, unfortunately, in the Western world, not so much in the East. In the East, from 5 years old, children were given, they were given to a spiritual master. They were given to a guru in order to learn the sacred spiritual goals of life. It's meant for serving those who are dedicated to God. And that is technically the spiritual master, a person whose life is dedicated just for the service of God. In the Western world, we've been trained from very, very small to become selfish enjoyers of our senses, practically speaking. And it's getting worse, practically. But we can change the desires of the heart. And that's what Krishna consciousness or bhakti yoga is all about. It's changing the desires from selfish enjoyments for myself or my extended. The scriptures that describe God and his characteristics and his qualities so that we understand he's the supreme person. Our problem in the material world is we're basically all envious. We're basically all envious, and that's how we got here to begin with. We were envious of God. We were envious of his position as supreme. We wanted to be God, or we wanted to enjoy like God. So where can we go? We can't stay there with God if we don't want to serve him. So we made a place where we can come and try to be God ourselves, the material world. And so we're all here trying to be God and not succeeding very well and not finding many people who want to help us be God. And we're envious of each other in the material world. So how do we overcome that envious mood? Only by surrendering to a certain degree an intelligent drive extremely fancy vehicles. I may have a fabulous home, but that's not satisfying my soul. No, we're spiritual. It's like a fish out of water. That example is given. The fish, you can take it out of the water. You can put it in a Maserati. You can put it in a Maserati. You can put it in the finest home in Bishop's Court. But the fish will be miserable because it's not in its element. It's not in its element. So we are spiritual. We're not going to be happy in the material world. So we have to find that spiritual atmosphere. And that happens when we chant the names of God. Maybe you were hearing before, was it nice? I think it was okay. I mean, I don't sing that well, but still the vibration was nice. So it's purifying the name of God. And actually, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are the deities or the statues there on the altar, they brought this chanting of Hare Krishna 500 years ago to India as the unique and the easiest way of making spiritual progress, uh, chanting Hare Krishna. So it's a mantra, it's a Maha mantra, and it cleanses the heart. And we may be working in the garden all day and we get dirty and, we can change our clothes and take a shower. But living in this material world, our hearts and our minds become filthy. And we have criminals and all kinds of other persons. So how do you clean the heart? How do you clean the heart? Do you just cut it out and dip it in the bath with sound vibration? And that's what the Hare Krishna mantra does. Cheto Darpanam Marjanam Bhava Mahadevagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kaya Vichandrika Vitarnam Vidya Bhava Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipatam Purnamritas Vadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So, and that's the most important information. So we have to do it when we change the heart. We're not accustomed to doing things to make a connection with God. The one thing that we encourage people to do, and is most important, is associate with those who do. And especially advanced and pure devotees, not just old devotees like myself, but pure devotees, advanced devotees who have simply an understanding that the best thing in my life, the best thing I can do at any time, any place, anywhere, is to do service for the Supreme. So find that association and hear from them on what to do in order to become a spiritual. Chicago, 1975, and the Time magazine was in the pocket, and the cover said crime, why, and what to do. So Prabhupada saw that, and when he landed, he asked the temple president to arrange to meet with the police department. And Lieutenant Mosey was a lieutenant in the public relations office. He actually came to meet Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada asked him, you give us a building and you give us your prisoners. And we will get them chanting and taking sanctified food offered to Krishna, and they will take him up on the deal, on the offer. But in a way, we're all criminals. We're all criminals to the degree that we've left the service of God and began performing all kinds of crazy activities for our own selfish enjoyment. But we can establish this relationship through practical activities. We were mentioning hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping, like that. So how to do those particular things you can learn. You can learn from the devotees here. The devotees are serving Krishna here 24 hours, 7 days a week. So if you want to learn, then we can teach you. So the most important thing is to associate with the devotees. Chant Hare Krishna. Uh, Learn how to worship Krishna. Prabhupada mentioned that anyone who offers their food to Krishna is a devotee. So we can offer. You can prepare foods. You don't kind of taste it beforehand. But you prepare foods and you can offer to Krishna before you take. And Krishna says, he'll accept the leaves, the flowers, the fruits, and the water. He'll also accept the cauliflower and the potato. So you can offer that. Dear Maharaj, kindly explain the concept of action in inaction. So there's a verse, it's actually in the same chapter. It means the one who knows action in inaction and inaction in action is intelligent among men. So here we're hearing about Krishna. Everyone is kind of sitting down. We're not moving around very much. It may not look like we're doing a lot, but we're very. People are driving and racing up and down the highways. It appears that they're active, but they're inactive because spiritually the amount of their activity is nothing. So the benefit of their activity amounts to not doing anything at all. So if a person is inactive, if a person may be sitting and chanting or reading the scriptures or things like that, person is actually very active, spiritually active. I don't know if that's okay. Third question, why do they say God has to enter a certain way when he's omnipresent? God has to enter a certain way. I'm not exactly sure. When he is omnipresent. Yes, he's omnipresent. He's everywhere. But how do you relate with his omnipresence? Omnipresence. We want to relate with God as present, not just everywhere, but personally present. We want to dance with him. We want to speak with him. We want to love him. You can't really do that. There's in the 11th chapter here, it describes Krishna's form as the universe. Everything in the material world is part. All the universes are part of a universal form of God. But how do you love a universe? How do you relate with a universe? It's not really possible. You can only relate with a person. So he has many forms. In fact, this coming weekend, not even weekend, this Thursday is just a few days away, is Krishna's appearance day, Krishna's birthday. God has a birthday. You say, why does God have to have a birthday? He doesn't have to have a birthday, but he has a birthday. He has an appearance day. An appearance day, and it's described as like the sun. At 5 o'clock in the morning, it's dark, but the sun is coming. The sun is coming up. So it's not like the sun is born at sunrise or the sun dies at sunset. The sun is always in the process of appearing, and it may appear that he's disappearing, but he's still coming. So he can appear. He can appear anywhere and any time. He can appear here. He can appear in his holy name. He can appear in our consciousness. He can appear in our dreams. The outcomes of my prayers. I don't know what to do with this. Could you say something on that? to enter into a different consciousness or understanding. And then when he sees that we're ready to accept what he has to offer, what plan he's made for us, then he will respond accordingly. But he has many plans. But the main plan is for us to go back home, back to him, back to the spiritual world, back to his loving service, loving service. Uh, so whatever is required to get us into that position, sometimes it may not be very comfortable, but it's understood when a person does direction of Krishna. So whatever happens to us, even though it may be uncomfortable, is all part of a plan. Back to him. So it's hard for us with our little brains to understand and our very strong desires at times what Krishna wants for us. But we have that faith. And there's a nice verse in the canto, sixth canto of Bhagavatam. And it explains that just as a blind, so we should simply be conducted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can't see exactly what he's doing, but we have to be sensitive to the indications that he gives. I was in Athlone yesterday, and there was a blind man. His eyes were sunken, and he had the stick walking. And I went into the hardware store to get something, and I was there for maybe 10 minutes. And then when I came out, he was about 15 feet further up the road, still and cracks, and somebody's put up a table there or something. Trying to get through, it was difficult. It was difficult. He had no one to guide him. So in the same way, we're kicking around through this material world. We think we've got a good bead on things, but actually we need the guidance. We need the guidance of a person who can really see. You see in the movies sometimes people get tied up. They get tied up hand and feet, and there's no way that person can get unloose. That person can get free unless there's someone who's free already to untie them. So we're looking for freedom. We're looking for the real freedom, the absolute freedom. But it can only be given from a person who actually has that freedom already. And that's the pure devotee. That's the spiritual master who's enlightened in full consciousness and service to God. So we're inviting everyone to start the journey. Start the journey. In different other religions, again, there's progress being made. There's progress being made. But we're inviting you, we don't mind saying so, we're inviting you to take up this process of spiritual advancement because it's the water and the hydrogen, and you're putting the spark and you're getting some water. It's an experiment, but in this experiment, the experiment is you. Put yourself into the experiment. You chant Hare Krishna, you follow the life of devotion, you study Bhagavad Gita, you inquire about Bhagavad Gita, and in the service of the spiritual master. So thank you very much. Thank you. We hope it prodded some questions. And after the Guru Puja and the Arti, then we'll be taking a nice vegetarian feast. And you can ask the devotees if you have any questions. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Srila Prabhupada. Please